Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is day 315, Thursday, November the 18th, 2018. Thank you so much for tuning in and welcome to all my new subscribers or people who may be viewing the TowerGate videos for the first time or what have you. It's great to have you. Welcome to the community. We're having lots of fun unwinding the deep state coup. It's quite the journey that we're on. Welcome to it. Fasten your seatbelts, my friends. Well, last night's video ended quite abruptly, and there was something I didn't get to yesterday that I did want to touch on before I get into today's TowerGate news. And that is, we have all these investigations going on, and it's kind of confusing to people, even to me, and I follow this stuff every day. So I just wanted to try to break down a little bit the various committees that are investigating and what they're doing and that type of thing. But also, more importantly, to point out something that I don't think a lot of people have considered or are aware of. And that is that these committees, three specifically, are working together. And they're working together because while each of their own committees are going to have a final report after they finish their investigations, but all three of them are then going to get together and put out a overall report which covers all three of the main events. Because remember, each committee is tasked with oversight or looking into or investigating different aspects of the overall crimes that we're covering here every day on TowerGate that are all associated with the deep state coup, which covers the dossier, the unmasking, the surveillance, and all these other things, getting the FISA warrants, the corruption at the DOJ and the FBI. All these things are fairly complex, and so they're really broken down between intelligence and law. And so their investigations are attacking the issue from the perspective of intelligence. That would be your intelligence committees. And then, of course, on the law side, the legal side of things, there were things done that were illegal. That's being handled by the judicial type committees. So let me just real briefly give you the three main committees and what they're really tasked with. And it's, again, this is a three-prong approach, and these committee members are working in unison. They're working together. Each of their own committees that they chair are working a certain piece of it. And then when all three of them get done, they'll put the three different pieces together that will sort of comprise everything. And then we'll get one final report, by which time there'll already be special prosecutors, there'll already be indictments and things like that going on already at that point. So let me go ahead and go through this. First of all, we have the House Intelligence Committee, headed by Devin Nunes. And so specifically, he's looking into intelligence-related matters, things that are focused more on the FISA issues, the dossier issues, and the surveillance and unmasking issues. That's primarily what the target is that Devin Nunes is focused on, like a laser beam. So it's the House Intelligence Committee by Devin Nunes that's really focusing on the dossier, the FISA abuse, the unmasking, the wiretapping and such. And he's looking into all the agencies that would include the FBI, the CIA, the ODNI, that's the Office of Director of National Intelligence, and the NSA. So that's where Devin Nunes is focused. Next, you have the Senate Judiciary Committee, which is headed by Chuck Grassley. And of course, Chuck Grassley is looking into the legal side of the dossier and the legitimacy of the FISA warrant and whether or not that was all legal. He's looking at the legal aspects of these things. He's also looking at the FBI and the DOJ collaboration in the what appears to be the corruption involving those two and the legalities involved and the actions that may have been taken or not taken on behalf of those two primary agencies. And there's other agencies on the peripheral, but that's the main focus. So it's looking at the legal part of it. Then you have the House Judiciary Committee, which is also looking into the legalities of the actions of the FBI, the DOJ, and they are focusing mainly and working with and from resources that come from within the Inspector General, which is Mr. Horrorwitz, the custodian, who will be the man who will be serving up the heads to save the integrity of the institution that he serves. Remember, Michael Horowitz is the Inspector General. His job is to preserve the integrity of the Department of Justice and the FBI. Not to preserve the integrity of Comey or Lynch or any of these people. His job is to protect the integrity of the actual agency itself. That's what his job is. Not to protect the players and the people who work there, but to protect the institution, the entity itself. And so the House Judiciary Committee works kind of with the Inspector General. So what you're going to have is the Inspector General report, which is expected to come out sometime in March. You're going to have all three of these committees probably sometime in March, maybe may run into April, even May, because there's so many people to interview and re-interview, so many documents to look at, millions of documents to look at, and things and such. So it's a time-consuming process, but they're going over it very, very carefully, and they're learning a lot. And that's why we are right now in the eye of the storm. Everything is kind of quiet just before the big boom. Keep watching. So all three of these agencies, all three of these committees, I should say, along with the Inspector General office, are all kind of working together in unison. And they will all come up with their own individual findings. Then they will get together and they will put out a joint report, which will be devastating. And I know a lot of people say, the Clintons and the Obamas and all the corrupt deep state people, they always get away with it. They'll never be thrown in jail. They'll never be held accountable. Not this time. I agree with you in the past. Not this time. I'm telling you, take it to the bank, my friends. There are going to be dozens and dozens of people indicted and going to jail. High-level people. High-level people. And I promise you that the rotten Reverend Clinton, her crooked-peckered husband, Slick Willie, the rapists, along with Chelsea and all the officers at the Clinton Foundation, are all going to jail. Yes, they are. Now, there is another committee out there. That's the Oversight Committee. And that, of course, is headed up by the pitbull, Trey Gowdy. But it appears that Gowdy is having some issues. There's really not much coming out of the House Oversight Committee. I can only guess that possibly Trey Gowdy is having some difficulty getting his lips separated from the ass of Uncle Bob the Executioner Mueller. Trey Gowdy's lips may have to be surgically removed from the ass cheeks of Uncle Bob, because he spends most of his time with his lips attached to the ass of Uncle Bob, the executioner. The pitbull, Trey Gowdy. Okay, how about some TowerGate news? Chuck Ross of the Daily Caller, an FBI agent, shared the name of Trump campaign volunteer George Papadopoulos with Christopher Steele during a meeting in early October 2016. Why did the FBI share this information? The FBI or even a local police department does not share information like that, even with their closest source, for a lot of reasons that I don't really have time to go into. I think I went into it once before. I went through like 7 or 8 items of why, and the why, when you're in a law enforcement investigation, why you would never share this type of information, even with your closest source. Now, we know that the individual that Christopher Steele was probably meeting with in Rome, Italy, which is where Papadopoulos was hanging out with Mr. Milian, at all about the same time that the first memo came to the FBI and all that kind of stuff was going on. We know that this FBI agent is probably someone that Christopher Steele became acquainted with when he was working on the FIFA, the International Soccer League, scandal that went down. The government in the UK had hired Orbis, Christopher Steele's firm, to do some research work on the FIFA investigation. And he was the one who they asked to go to Rome, Italy to brief American FBI agents in Rome, Italy on the FIFA investigation. And that's where he likely developed a relationship with this FBI agent in Rome, Italy. And that's likely the FBI agent that he was meeting with and talking to, sharing information with, and likely the FBI agent who shared this information about Papadopoulos with Christopher Steele. And it appears at this time that the FBI agent asked Steele if he had heard of Papadopoulos, and apparently Steele told him he had not. Why did the FBI share this information with Christopher Steele? Information that would have been, you know, if it's a source inside the FBI, I mean, that's, you don't reveal sources inside an investigation. You just don't do that. There'll be more questions on this point. You can be assured of that. You can absolutely be assured of that. CNN cleans up at the Trump Fake News Awards. Congratulations to the Clinton News Network, the Clown News Network, whatever you want to call them, the Shit House Network, whatever you want to call them. But they captured 4 awards. Absolutely. Well done. Well done. That's hard to do. With so much competition for fake news, for CNN to pull off four wins in this competition, that's exemplary. I got to give them another round of applause. That is quite exemplary. Fantastic job over there, you guys, at CNN. Of course, we had the New York Times capturing 2 fake news awards. We had other winners, ABC, Newsweek, Time Magazine, and the Washington Compost, all capturing awards in the first annual Trump Fake News Awards. And I hope he does this every year, so we can have the 2nd annual, the 3rd annual, the 4th annual, the 5th annual, the 6th annual, the 7th, all the way up to his final year in office, the 8th year of Fake News Awards. By then, he will probably have destroyed the entire fake news media. They may not even exist by then. And I believe the overall winner was, of course, Paul Krugman for that, I think ABC or MSNBC, one of the two, when he went on before the election or before Trump was elected and predicted that if Trump won, the stock market would lose 5,000 points on its opening day and it would tank and the economy would crash and we'd go into a deep recession. That's Paul Krugman who told us that, and I believe he was the top award getter. Now, I don't know what they get for their awards, if they get a trophy or maybe Trump invites them over and gives them 1 scoop of ice cream while he gets 2. I really don't know how that's going to work as far as what he actually gives them for their efforts, but you've really got to hand it to these people, you know, for the fake news. They have done an absolutely fantastic job of, I mean, it's hard to produce 24 hours a day of fake news, but they are absolutely doing a bang-up job. Bang-up job. The government shutdown. A lot of people talking about the government shutdown. The government shutdown is nothing more than just a political football that gets kicked around from time to time, especially in an election year, to play some politics. Generally, the president wins and the Congress loses. But they try to play it up like it's this big scary thing, like the country's just going to totally collapse because they're going to shut down the government. What this means is it only affects non-essential government personnel. About 8% of the government. Maybe a national park may not be open or something like that. Only non-essential personnel are furloughed. Now, these people love it when there's a government shutdown because it's free paid vacation. Because as soon as the furlough is over and the government shutdown is over, usually it lasts a couple of days, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, they go back to work. And then the Congress, of course, every single time passes a resolution to give them back pay for all the days that they were off. Even if it's a month or 2, they get paid for every day. Now, if you live paycheck to paycheck, that might be a little tough. But if you got some money laid back and you can afford not to get paid for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 weeks or whatever it is, hell, you can go on vacation. And you'll be getting paid. As soon as you get back and the shutdown is over, you get all that money back. A big, fat check. So it's literally like a paid, nice, extra 2, 3, 4 days, up to several weeks paid vacation if you're one of these non-essential federal government workers. And what that tells you is about these people is that they're non-essential. We could do without them, probably. So forget all this stuff about government shutdowns, going to do all this horrible stuff. You'll not even notice it. The only people who will notice it is the people in the 7-8% who are non-essential personnel, or if you happen to like to go jogging or skateboarding in a park that might be closed or not, maybe have rangers, or maybe they don't come and clean the restrooms or something. This is really all it means. It has little effect. As far as the government shutdown tactic itself, I think it's a bluff. I don't think the Democrats will do it because they want to do it by hanging this DACA legislation into the budget. Now, if you look at the polls, I looked at an aggregate of polls which shows 62% of Americans want the border secured, and they do not support legal status for illegals. 62%. It's a winner for the Republicans and a loser for the Democrats, and they know it, and I think that's why they are bluffing. If the Democrats force the government shutdown over this particular DACA bill being attached to the budget, they will lose. They will lose. It will boomerang back on them, and they'll be very sorry they did it. And I think that they're getting the same advice. I think they're bluffing. But I really don't think that the government shutdown will happen, because they'll either do another continuing resolution for another 3 months or 30 days or 90 days or whatever, or if the Republicans want to, they can just totally detach this DACA legislation from the government spending bill, and they've got enough Republicans to probably pass the bill if you get DACA out of it, which is what they should do anyway. DACA shouldn't be involved in the budget resolution bill at all. It's a totally separate issue, and so I think there's a less than 50% chance that they do a government shutdown. If they do, it would only be 24, 48, 72 hours, something like that. It will be over very quickly as soon as the Democrats see the massive hit they're taking in the polls as a result. But I believe, again, the Republicans can just push the DACA out of the bill, not even include it. They can have a vote. They can get the Republican votes to pass the bill, or they can do a continuing resolution or something like that. So it's much to do about nothing. Go on about your lives and focus on the real scandals and on the real important things, which is the deep state coup. Don't lose your focus on some political theatrics, which is all that this is. Did you know that Uncle Bob, the executioner, questioned, and his Hillary donor posse questioned the rotten Reverend Clinton about the dossier? Now, we're probably never going to get the transcripts of that because that occurred with Mueller, and he's a special counsel, and they generally don't release too much of the stuff from special counsels, special prosecutors, and things like that. But she will be called, because she paid for the dossier. At some point, she will be called to testify in some of these committees. She probably won't testify. She'll probably plead the fifth. She'll eventually find herself in front of a prosecutor and a grand jury, and we'll see what she does there. But yeah, Hillary was questioned by the executioner Robert Mueller about her association and knowledge of the dossier. It's funny because every one of these Democrats that were asked about it, when they were asking about it back in the fall of 2017, Debbie Blabbermouth Wasserman Schultz. Oh, I don't know anything about it. I didn't find out about it until later. Then they asked Tom Perez. Oh, he didn't know anything about it either until it became public. Then they asked Donna Brazile. Well, she said she didn't know anything about it. She did ask about it, but they told her she didn't have a need to know. They're all putting it back on Mark Elias from the law firm, saying, well, we just pay the money for opposition research and we leave it up to Mr. Elias to determine who to hire. Bullshit! Bullshit! You think that the rotten Reverend, think about it, it's opposition research that they were paying over $10 million for. In fact, the figure now I heard is over $12 million. They're paying over $12 million for opposition research to use in a political campaign, which comes down to the very wire in September, October, November, the last 3 months. They're paying $12 million for opposition research, and they're not particularly interested in knowing anything about what's being learned in that opposition research that they're paying $12 million for. Only a really foolish individual would believe that. You better believe the rotten Reverend Clinton paying $12 million large. She's going to be getting day-by-day details and pushing and pushing and pushing. She'll be saying, hey, you tell that son of a bitch Christopher Steele I'm paying his his butt $12 million, or Fusion GPS, I'm paying them $12 million. I want results. I want daily reports on what they got on Trump. I want this, I want that. You can bet she knew every single detail day by day. She was getting briefed on what was going on. She knew all the players. We've talked about the history of the Rotten Reverend Clinton back in Little Rock with the Glenn Simpson and his wife Mary Jacoby, who's from Little Rock. We talked about the associations of Christopher Steele with the Hillary Clinton State Department. We've talked about the connections of George Papadopoulos, connections with working groups involved in the State Department of the Rotten Reverend Clinton. For her to sit back, along with with Debbie Blabbermouth Wasserman Schultz and Tom Perez and what's his name, the child molester Podesta, with all these people sitting back, oh, we didn't know anything about it. We just heard about it on the news. Bullshit. Bullshit. The Inspector General is now stating that Imran Awan used unauthorized access to transfer congressional data to the stolen server. We knew that. We suspected it. But now we have the Inspector General. His findings. And his findings are that, yeah, the Awans stole tons and tons of computer equipment from the Democrats. They set these remote servers up. They were transferring this information, sucking it right out of the congressional servers from these committees where they handle sensitive information, sucking it right out of there onto their own private servers, and probably transferring it to, I would think, Pakistani intelligence, maybe the Muslim Brotherhood, God knows who. But my guess is they'll be trying to get to the bottom of that. The Imran Awan thing has kind of gone onto the back burner, but not so much because there's no interest, but only because the more they dig, the more they find, and that causes them to dig even more. And this, what should have been what they thought was just an investigation into some little bit of corruption going on with this guy, they're now finding out was much, much deeper, a lot more going on. And it appears now that there was a cover-up. Once it was discovered, they attempted, the Democrats, specifically guided by Debbie Blabbermouth Wasserman Schultz, put on a cover-up effort to try to cover this all up. That's why she didn't want them getting their hands on that laptop. Remember when she threatened the police chief of the DC Police Department? There will be consequences. Isn't that what she told him? There will be consequences. Yes, Blabbermouth Wasserman Schultz, there will be consequences. If you covered up the knowledge of this crime, that Imran Awan had unauthorized access, which you granted, Blabbermouth, granted unauthorized access, and he took that access and he stole and transferred massive amounts of data from Congress onto a stolen server, and God knows who he sent it to. Here's a question for you. In his testimony in the summer of 2017, to the Senate Judiciary Committee, Homer Glenn Simpson of Confusion GPS said in his testimony that the FBI had an inside man, and he learned that from Christopher Steele. He says in his testimony that Christopher Steele told him that while he was talking to this FBI agent in Rome, that the FBI agent told Christopher Steele that they had a man on the inside of the Trump campaign. Then you fast forward to just a couple of weeks ago when this became public, that Homer Simpson made this revelation in his testimony. Then, to cover their ass, they came out and said, yeah, well, he was talking about Papadopoulos because the Papadopoulos story had just been broke by the New York Times, which was bullshit, and we debunked it right here, as well as other people. The problem with this is that how, in August of 2017, did Glenn Homer Simpson know about George Papadopoulos? I mean, that was 5 months before the FBI even interviewed Papadopoulos. That was a long time. 9 months. More than 9 months. before we even heard the name Papadopoulos. No one had ever heard of Papadopoulos. But somehow, Glenn Simpson is now stating, or a source close to Glenn Simpson of Confusion GPS is stating that that's who he was referring to when he said that the FBI had a guy on the inside. So what they're saying is that Glenn Simpson knew about George Papadopoulos long before we ever heard of him, and 5 months before the FBI interviewed him. That's a problem. Have any of you got an explanation for me? Can any of you explain to me how Homer Simpson of Confusion GPS knew in August of 2017 and before that George Papadopoulos was the inside man for the FBI, according to Christopher Steele? Someone better explain that, Mr. Levy. Someone better come up with a very good answer to that question. Dave Janda. Many of you have never heard of Dave Janda. He is by trade an orthopedic surgeon, but he was one of Ronald Reagan's closest confidants when he was president. Ronald Reagan didn't trust the FBI and the CIA. He would get his briefings every day, and he just didn't have a lot of confidence in them. He relied mostly on private intelligence from private firms. He was very, very close with the folks at the Heritage Foundation, and he got lots of information from them, and as it turned out, their information at the Heritage Foundation on the Soviet Union turned out to be far more accurate than what he was getting from the FBI and the CIA. But one of his very close personal advisors at that time on these types of matters, because of his deep connections and his honesty, was Dave Janda. And Dave Janda is now reporting that he's hearing from his sources that this IG report, along with the upcoming revelations from these committees, will trigger at least one special counsel to look into specifically Clinton, the Rotten Reverend, James Comey, and Loretta Lynch as being the point people, the top of the pyramid. They are going to be the focus of a special counsel and everything that falls underneath them. That's coming from Dave Janda, a very trustworthy source who's very, very connected and has been for many, many years. There you go, my friends. TowerGate, day 315, Thursday, January the 18th, 2018. You guys be safe. Stay warm. Talk to you next time. Bye.